Kevin Young and BYU have done the seemingly impossible. They have landed the nation's top-rated recruit. We're talking a guy who's considered to be the best basketball player in the entire country in this current recruiting cycle. What does AJ Dybantsa mean for BYU and vice versa? Let's talk about it in a special edition of Locked On Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you to every single one of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. If you're watching this, that means that AJ Dybantsa has just declared on ESPN's First Take with Stephen A. Smith that he will be attending Brigham Young University. Yes, good old BYU is landed the nation's top-rated basketball recruit in this and not the most upcoming recruiting cycle, the current recruiting cycle, the 2025 cycle. And I don't know how to say it any more clear than this. This is the biggest single recruiting win in Brigham Young University athletics history. Bar none. Doesn't matter. You can argue any athlete you want. This is the single biggest get in BYU athletics history. It's absolutely unfathomable to say this with a straight face, but it's the truth. BYU has landed AJ Dybantsa and has landed a guy who could transform this basketball program from one that is the longest, has the longest streak of NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four berth, and could potentially finally have their first ever number one overall pick in the NBA draft. Obviously, back in 1993, Sean Bradley went number 2 overall to the Philadelphia 76ers. That is the highest a BYU player has ever gone in the NBA draft. AJ Dybantsa is considered to be on par with such luminary players as LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony. Just think of top tier talents, even if they didn't play at the collegiate level, because obviously LeBron bypassed college to go directly to the NFL. But their recruiting profile suggests that this is the same type of player that BYU has just landed. And Kevin Young, once again, just shocks the college basketball universe and pulls off another shocking but awesome recruiting win for BYU. It's absolutely remarkable to consider where this program was with a surprise 5th place finish in the Big 12 a season ago, and to see where it's elevated itself even after losing the head coach who finished in that 5th place spot in Mark Pope. It is absolutely remarkable to consider what Kevin Young has done in about a half year's time since taking over as BYU men's basketball head coach. Every dime, nickel, and penny BYU paid to get a guy like Kevin Young to come head up the BYU basketball program has proven to be worth it. Every dime, nickel, and penny, if not stacks of cash, the Brinks truck proverbially, that has been backed up to land AJ Dybantsa via NIL, etc., to get him to Provo is worth it, because this is a guy, once again, who is a program-changing force for Brigham Young University. I am ecstatic to watch and excited to watch what BYU becomes under Kevin Young, because if he can pull off this type of recruiting win, anything, and I mean anything, is within reach for Kevin Young. He has absolutely transformed BYU basketball from a good, plucky program into a top-tier basketball powerhouse. He is likely to have at least 1, if not 2, first-round picks in next year's NBA draft, with Jaeger Demon currently knocking on the door of potentially being the number 1 pick next year, if not a bona fide top 3, maybe at worst top 5 pick in next year's NBA draft. And then a guy like Cannon Catchings, who could find himself being taken in the first round as well. AJ Dybantsa, once he enrolls at BYU, the whole thought is he's going to be there for 6 to 7 months, 2 semesters, and then be on his way to hearing his name called first overall by some lucky NBA franchise who is going to look at him as the talisman that is going to lead them to glory. That is what BYU has in AJ Dybantsa coming to this program. He is a 3-level standout. He can score inside, in the mid-range, and from long range beyond the 3-point arc. He has got the elite size, the athleticism, the overall know-how, and the smarts that elite basketball players have. He is going to come to BYU and be an absolute sensation. And that announcement came on national television with Stephen A. Smith reacting in Lifetime. Wait, does it get any bigger than this? What else? What else can Kevin Young seemingly do beyond the impossible? It seems literally everything that he touches turns to gold, to use the King Midas reference. Kevin Young has been an absolute revelation for BYU and BYU basketball. And the fact that he just pulled off maybe his best recruiting win, it is his best recruiting win to date. And quite frankly, the best recruiting win, once again, in BYU athletics history. It is absolutely going to be incredible to watch what happens here. I am hopeful that AJ Dybantsa has the impact at BYU that I hope that many think he can have. He is a guy that many think could come into BYU, lead them to a Final Four, heck, maybe even a national championship, and then once again skip off to the NBA where he'll cash in for millions there after already having cashed in for millions. This is a guy who's got deals with Red Bull and Nike already. He's being paid reportedly millions, that's multiple millions, by BYU in an NIL deal, and obviously there'll be revenue sharing on top of that from Brigham Young University to come and play. This is a young man who's going to be worth tens of millions of dollars before he even sets foot in the NBA. And oh, by the way, with the way that the NBA contracts are going, AJ Dybantsa could be part of a current crop of NBA talent if his career plays out the way that many envision it could. He could be maybe one of the first tier of NBA athletes to net north of $1 billion. That's with a B, $1 billion in on-court earnings in his NBA career. If, like I said, if everything plays out here, that is the type of guy BYU just landed, and it's absolutely awesome. It is. I'm as giddy as anybody considering what BYU has done here. And I cannot wait to see the type of impact that AJ Dybantsa can have, for BYU, but more importantly, just continuing to transform BYU's image from being a university that's got a pretty good basketball program to being a top tier blue blood-esque type basketball program. Kevin Young is absolutely killing it for BYU, and he has taken this university from zero to hero in no time at all. It is going to bear watch. It's going to be worth watching or bear watching to see what BYU does as Kevin Young progresses as a coach. And quite frankly, the other question that comes up in my mind is how long Kevin Young's at BYU with the recruiting success he's having. Now, obviously, on-court success has to follow with this, but when you have a guy who's got a perfect recruiting ranking, a 100 rating from 24/7 Sports, it's the best recruiting rating you can get as an athlete. Obviously, there's the top is 100, and that's what AJ Dybantsa has. To have that guy coming to BYU, to have him playing in the Marriott Center, to have him playing and leading BYU in the Big 12 Conference, what are the things that BYU could accomplish? That is now the new stratosphere that BYU exists in, and I, for one, cannot wait to be breaking it all down right here on your original daily BYU podcast, the Locked On Cougars podcast. We'll have more on this on our full edition of the podcast tomorrow, but man, what an incredible day it already has been for BYU, and it's not even past breakfast time here in the Mountain Time Zone, obviously, 10:30 Eastern, but nonetheless, incredible scenes as AJ Dybantsa has picked BYU basketball. Let's talk more about it. We'll get to that on tomorrow's podcast. But wow, what a recruiting win for BYU. What a recruiting win for Kevin Young. And once again, congratulations to AJ Dybantsa and his family. And looking forward to seeing you as a member of the BYU basketball program and the BYU basketball family overall. And wow, what could the future hold? Could be very, very special for BYU. All right, more on this coming up, but keep it here every single day with us right out here on Locked On Cougars. Once again, thank you for making it your first and listen and or view of the day. And as always, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.